Welcome to Logic Over Faith. The human mind has always tried to understand the world around it. From the earliest days of human history, people looked at the sun, the moon, the stars, and the storms, and wondered what they meant. When there was no science to explain things, religion stepped in and offered answers. Islam, like other religions, built a complete worldview around stories, rules, and promises of the unseen. The problem is that many of these beliefs, when looked at carefully, simply do not make sense. They may have worked in ancient times when people lacked knowledge, but today, when we have science, history, and reason, these beliefs sound foolish. Let us explore 14 of them in detail. One of the most striking beliefs in Islam is the idea that the Quran is a perfect book written by God and free from any mistake. This is repeated again and again by believers. But when we read it, we find contradictions. In one place, the Quran says man was created from clay, in another from a clot of blood, in another from water, in yet another from dust. If this book was really written by an all-knowing being, it should have given one clear answer. But it sounds more like human guesswork from a time when people were trying to figure out biology without microscopes. Imagine a modern textbook giving 4 different answers to the same question. It would be laughed out of the classroom. Yet millions believe this is divine wisdom. That is foolish. Another belief is that the Quran can never be imitated, and no human could ever write something like it. This is often called the challenge of the Quran. But when you actually read it without reverence, it is just a collection of verses in rhyming Arabic prose. The only reason Muslims think it cannot be imitated is because they are told this from birth. If we translate the Quran into English, the so-called beauty disappears, and it reads like any other old religious text with repeated threats, promises, and vague statements. Believing that no one can write like it is like saying no one can ever make music like Beethoven. It is a claim of faith, not a fact, and to hold on to it as proof of God is foolish. A third strange belief is that angels exist and are constantly watching humans. Muslims believe 2 angels sit on the shoulders of each person, writing down every deed, good or bad. Think about it. With 8 billion people alive right now, that would mean 16 billion angels busy writing notes every second. And that is not even counting the billions of people who lived before us. Where do these angels keep their endless records? Do they use paper scrolls or some heavenly hard drives? The whole idea comes from a time when people thought writing down deeds was the only way to keep record. Today we have cameras, satellites, and digital files. Yet we are still supposed to imagine invisible angels with pens flying around us. It is clearly a human invention. Connected to this is the Islamic belief in jinns. Jinns are said to be creatures made of smokeless fire, invisible to humans but living all around us. They can possess people, cause mischief, or even marry humans. Many Muslims still believe mental illness or epilepsy is caused by jinn possession. Exorcists are called to recite verses and beat the so-called possessed person until the jinn leaves. In reality, these are simply health problems that need doctors and medicine. Believing in invisible fire creatures is no different from believing in fairies or goblins. In fact, it is worse because this belief has caused real suffering to people who were denied treatment and abused in the name of religion. To keep this belief in the 21st century is foolish. Another foolish idea is the promise of paradise. According to Islamic belief, paradise is a physical place with gardens, rivers, milk, honey, and wine. Believers will live forever in comfort, surrounded by virgins created only for their pleasure. The description sounds like the dream of a desert man living in a dry, hot environment with little food or drink. Instead of a deep spiritual idea, it looks like an earthly fantasy extended to eternity. And it is not even consistent. Wine is forbidden in this life but promised as a reward in the next. Women are told they will be given to men as virgins again and again. This reflects a male-centered society, not divine justice. If a modern person described their dream afterlife in such terms, we would call it childish. Yet for millions, it is the highest hope. On the other side of paradise is the belief in hell. In Islam, hell is a place of eternal torture with fire, boiling water, and endless pain. Even for small sins, people can be punished. Imagine a person who lived 80 years on earth making mistakes like lying or skipping prayers. For that, they are supposed to burn forever without end. This is not justice. It is cruelty. No parent would punish their child forever for one wrong act. Yet Muslims believe a merciful God will burn people endlessly. The idea of eternal hell shows how fear was used to control followers. In ancient times, rulers used physical torture to keep order. Religion took that same logic and extended it into the afterlife. The foolishness here is obvious. A perfect God does not need to torture endlessly. Another belief that sounds strange is the idea of the Kaaba in Mecca being the house of God. Muslims are told to face it during prayer, and millions travel to circle around it during pilgrimage. But it is just a cube-shaped building made of stone rebuilt many times. God, who created galaxies and billions of stars, is said to have a favorite stone house on Earth. People even kiss the black stone in its wall thinking it is sacred. But history shows the Kaaba existed before Islam and was used by pagans to house idols. Islam simply took over the same site. If you think about it, kissing a stone for blessings is not different from idol worship. It is foolish to claim Muslims do not worship objects when they bow toward a cube and kiss a rock. One of the most harmful beliefs is in divine predestination. Islam teaches that everything happens by the will of Allah. Every death, every accident, every choice is already written. Yet at the same time, humans are told they are responsible for their deeds and will be punished or rewarded. This is a clear contradiction. If everything is already written, then a murderer is only doing what God decided. Punishing him makes no sense. But if humans have free will, then God does not control everything. Muslims try to hold both ideas at once, which is logically impossible. In daily life, when a tragedy happens like a child dying in an accident, many people just say it was the will of Allah. This prevents them from finding real solutions or demanding safety measures. Belief in predestination is not just foolish but dangerous. Another strange belief is that women must cover themselves because their hair and body can tempt men. This places all responsibility on women instead of men learning self-control. In many Muslim countries, women cannot move freely, study, or work without restrictions because of this belief. The idea that an all-powerful God is worried about a few strands of hair being seen is absurd. In reality, these rules were made by men in a tribal culture to control women. It has nothing to do with divine wisdom. A society that still forces women to hide themselves under cloth while men walk freely shows how foolish this belief remains. Linked to this is the belief that a woman's testimony in court is worth half of a man's. The Quran explicitly states this in financial matters. The excuse given is that women are more emotional or forgetful. This may have made sense in a tribal society where women had less involvement in trade, but today it is insulting and false. Women are judges, scientists, and leaders. To still hold on to the belief that they are mentally weaker is foolish. It shows how human prejudice entered the so-called Word of God. Another Islamic belief is that apostates, those who leave Islam, must be punished, sometimes even killed. This comes from Hadith and the fear that people abandoning the faith would weaken the community. In many Muslim countries, leaving Islam is illegal or brings death threats. But truth should not need protection by violence. If Islam were truly the religion of truth, people would stay by choice, not by fear. Killing or punishing people for changing their mind is not only foolish, it is barbaric. Another belief that sounds foolish is the idea that prayer 5 times a day is necessary, or else God will be angry. Think about it. Why would an eternal being who created galaxies need constant reminders of human obedience? If a human father demanded his children bow to him 5 times daily, we would call him insecure and tyrannical. Yet Muslims accept this as devotion. In practice, the prayer ritual interrupts daily life, work, and learning. It becomes a mechanical act often performed without thought. Believing that God's honor depends on such rituals is foolish. Finally, we must mention the belief in miracles attributed to Muhammad, such as splitting the moon. Many Muslims insist this actually happened, yet no historian or civilization outside Islam recorded it. The moon is still in one piece. Modern science shows no evidence of such an event. The story likely came from poetic exaggeration or myth-making, but it is treated as historical fact. Believing in such an impossible event without any evidence is perhaps the clearest example of foolishness. When we carefully examine these beliefs, it becomes clear that they are not the product of an all-powerful, all-knowing creator, but rather the product of a time and place. A desert culture 1400 years ago, with limited knowledge, created ideas that reflected its struggles, desires, and fears. The foolishness lies not only in the original ideas, but in the way people in the modern world still cling to them as if they were eternal truths. Take the example of fasting during Ramadan. Muslims are told to stop eating and drinking from dawn until sunset for a whole month every year. This is supposed to bring them closer to God and teach discipline. But look at the details. People still eat heavy meals before dawn and after sunset, often more than usual. Restaurants stay open all night and people sleep through the day. It becomes less about self-control and more about a shift in routine. And in hot countries where the days are long, fasting can actually harm health, especially for workers or children. Believing that God wants people to harm their bodies or change their schedule in such a mechanical way every year is foolish. If the purpose is self-control, people can practice discipline in many other healthier ways. Another belief is in the absolute authority of hadith collections. Muslims are told that sayings attributed to Muhammad, even if written down hundreds of years after his death, are to be followed as law. Many of these sayings are absurd or contradictory. For example, there are hadiths claiming that flies carry both disease and its cure on their wings. Others say black dogs are evil. Some say women bring bad luck. These reflect superstitions of the past, not divine wisdom. Yet millions base their daily lives' laws and even punishments on such sayings. It shows how foolish it is to take ancient hearsay and elevate it above reason. Then there is the belief that the Quran is preserved word for word exactly as it was revealed, with no change. Muslims are taught this as a central truth, but historical evidence shows the opposite. Early manuscripts of the Quran differ. The Uthmanic Codex destroyed variant versions. Even today there are different recitation styles known as qira'at with different words. Scholars know this, but ordinary Muslims are told a simple story of perfect preservation. Believing that no letter was changed despite clear evidence is like believing the earth is flat when we have pictures from space. It is another example of blind faith against facts. Another foolish belief is that Islam has all the answers for every problem of life, including modern science. Many Muslims claim the Quran predicted discoveries like the expansion of the universe or embryology. But when we look at the verses, they are vague and poetic. The so-called prediction of embryology says man was created from a clot of blood. That is not science. The claim about the expanding universe comes from a verse that can be read in many ways. Believers twist the meanings after science discovers something, and then pretend the Quran had it all along. This is like reading horoscopes, which are vague, and then saying they predicted your day. It is foolish to think a 7th century book has hidden modern science when it cannot even give a consistent account of creation. Another example is the belief in magic and the evil eye. Many Muslims believe that reciting Quranic verses can protect them from curses, or that someone's jealous look can harm them. In some places, people tie black threads or hang verses on their walls to stop bad luck. These are nothing more than superstitions. If someone fails in business or gets sick, they blame the evil eye rather than real causes. This prevents progress and responsibility. Even today, educated Muslims in cities believe in magic spells and pay religious healers for protection. It is astonishing that in an age of medicine and technology, such medieval beliefs still survive. That is the power of religion to keep foolishness alive. The foolishness of these beliefs is not just theoretical. They affect real lives. For example, belief in divine punishment leads to stoning for adultery in some Muslim countries. Belief in apostasy laws leads to persecution of people who leave Islam. Belief in women's inferiority leads to restrictions on education and work. Belief in jinn possession leads to abuse of mentally ill people. Belief in paradise virgins fuels extremist violence where young men are promised women in the afterlife if they kill themselves. These are not harmless private beliefs. They shape laws, societies, and human suffering. The foolishness turns deadly. One of the most damaging beliefs is that Islam is complete and cannot be questioned. Muslims are taught that the Quran is the final revelation, and no one has the right to criticize it. Questioning is often called blasphemy and punished severely. This shuts down human curiosity and freedom. Imagine being told that one book holds all knowledge and that doubting it is a crime. It is the opposite of progress. Science and philosophy move forward by questioning everything. Islam tries to freeze thought at the level of the 7th century. That is why so many Muslim societies lag in education, freedom, and development. It is foolish to worship ignorance in the name of faith. Belief in unquestionable authority also extends to scholars. In Islam, clerics interpret the law and ordinary people are told to obey them. This creates a class of men who hold power over minds and lives. They decide what is halal or haram, what is allowed or forbidden. They argue endlessly over details like how long a beard should be or how to wash before prayer. Meanwhile, real issues like poverty or corruption are ignored. The foolishness here is giving authority to men based on religious training instead of reason or evidence. It allows manipulation and control of the masses. The belief in miracles surrounding the Quran and Muhammad continues to shape Muslim imagination. Stories are told of trees greeting Muhammad, of water flowing from his fingers, of animals speaking to him. These are the same kinds of legends told about many religious figures across history. Christians claim Jesus walked on water. Hindus claim their gods lifted mountains. When Muslims laugh at other religions' miracles, they forget their own. All such stories are products of myth-making, not reality. Believing them today without evidence is foolish. Another foolish idea is the obsession with ritual purity. Muslims believe that without proper washing, prayer is invalid. Women during menstruation are considered impure and cannot pray or touch the Quran. Sexual fluids are seen as polluting. These ideas come from ancient taboos about cleanliness, not divine commands. In practice, they create shame around natural human functions. A woman is told her monthly cycle makes her less worthy before God. Men are told to obsess over washing their private parts before prayer. This is not spiritual wisdom, it is ritual obsession. Treating natural bodily processes as dirty is foolish. Then there is the belief that non-Muslims are automatically inferior and cannot enter paradise no matter how good they are. According to Islam, even the most charitable, compassionate non-Muslim is destined for hell simply for not believing. Meanwhile, a sinful Muslim can eventually enter paradise just for having the right belief. This turns morality upside down. Goodness becomes less important than blind loyalty. A kind atheist doctor who saves lives is condemned, while a corrupt Muslim ruler who prays is promised forgiveness. This is foolish and unjust. It reveals that the system is about control, not morality. Finally, let us look at the belief that Islam is the fastest-growing religion because of its truth. Muslims repeat this as proof. But growth of a religion says nothing about truth. Christianity also grew rapidly. So did Buddhism. Ideas can spread for social, political, or birth rate reasons. Islam grows today mostly because of high birth rates in Muslim countries, not because people are converting in large numbers. To use population as proof of truth is like saying Coca-Cola is true because it is popular. It is a foolish argument, but one repeated often. When we add all these together, we see a clear pattern. Islam, like many religions, is built on a foundation of fear, promises, and superstitions. The foolish beliefs are not isolated. They form a whole system designed to control life from birth to death. From what you eat to how you dress to how you think about the universe, everything is covered. And once someone is inside the system, questioning is discouraged. That is why many people remain trapped. But once you step back and examine these beliefs with reason, the foolishness becomes obvious. In the modern world, with science, technology, and global knowledge, there is no need to hold on to such beliefs. We can live moral, meaningful lives without kissing stones, fearing jinns, or waiting for paradise virgins. We can build societies based on justice, equality, and compassion, not ancient laws about women's testimony or punishment for apostasy. The human mind has the power to grow beyond these childish ideas. The challenge is to recognize the foolishness of inherited beliefs and to have the courage to move forward. What we call foolish today was once the best explanation people had. We should not hate those who believed in them in the past, but to continue believing in them now, when we know better, is a choice. It is a choice to reject reason for comfort, to cling to tradition for identity. For those who value truth over illusion, it is time to let go. The foolish beliefs of Islam, like those of other religions, belong to history, not the future.